Now, I'm honored to have a very special guest joining me on the show. He has decades of experience working in law enforcement. He is the sheriff for Custer County, Colorado, and a sitting member of the board for the Colorado Auto Theft Prevention Authority. And some say he is also a car guy. Sheriff Rich Smith, welcome to Automotive ADHD.
Well, thank you, Matt, for the invitation. And I have enjoyed working 2 decades at the Colorado State Patrol. I retired from there, and then I'm currently the sheriff in Custer County. I've also been an emergency responder as a emergency medical technician on an ambulance, including here in Custer, and I volunteered on search and rescue. But as you mentioned, I'm also a car guy, and just one of my cousins was a city police officer in Iowa, and so I used to joke that he became a city cop, so he had to run fast to chase people, and I became a Colorado State Trooper so I could drive fast and chase people.
I love it. I love it. So you were born in Stuttgart, Germany, by the way, and you started your career as an EMT, and now you are the sheriff, and you said you kind of went between, you did Colorado State Patrol and a lot of stuff, but kind of fill in some more blanks there real quick so my listeners can get a really good idea of who you are.
Well, my dad was in the Air Force for a career, 26 years, and so I was born in Stuttgart, Germany. And then grew up mainly in Colorado Springs. And so we lived in Colorado Springs 1st to 6th grade. And then we had a couple more moves, and my dad retired, and my mom and dad retired in a different state. But ever since I left Colorado as a kid, I was in 6th grade when I left, I wanted to get back as soon as I could. And the other places we lived were Omaha and Oklahoma City. And I wanted to get back to Colorado. And I applied for a job with the Colorado State Patrol, and they hired me back in 2002, and then I've been here ever since.
That's awesome. And, Colorado is such a beautiful state to be in. It is just, one of the best. I think people come from around the world to be here, and it's always a treat when you already live here, I think. So it's always.
And several times, like if you have a bad day on the job as an EMT or a police officer, and then when you're just kind of processing through that at the end of the day, and then you look at the beautiful mountains, it's like I get to see that every day, and you get to see that every day, and your listeners do. But people, save up all year to come here for vacation, and so we're blessed to be able to live here in such a beautiful state.
Absolutely. And it is a gorgeous state. But one thing that I want to talk about here, and with this being a car show too, talking about auto theft, something that affects all of us. I've talked about on my show before, how Colorado, how this state, despite its beauty, despite the beautiful Sangre de Cristo mountain range that you've got over there in Custer County, we've got Pikes Peak out here where I'm at just past the radio studio. And despite that, though, we are the hotbed for car theft. And it's interesting when you look at it, so why do you think Colorado has the most car theft out of any state in the country? And it's not some state on the, East Coast. It's not, Florida, New Jersey, why is that?
So Colorado is unfortunately the hotbed for quite a few categories of crime, but as you mentioned, we were number 1 in the nation for auto theft. Totally unacceptable. In fact, last year we were approaching, I had the number here in front of me, almost $1 billion in stolen cars in Colorado. Wow. And my personal car insurance is USAA, and they've got an office there in Colorado Springs. And I went online to kind of tweak my coverages and everything. And somehow I accidentally entered the wrong zip code to Salt Lake City, and it dropped my car insurance $1,000 by moving out of state. And so one of the prices of auto theft is that all of us responsible drivers have to pay more in insurance. And I also had a car stolen right before I moved to Colorado. And even with the best insurance, I think if you'll talk to anyone that's had their car stolen or been in a crash, you never come out better than you were. You always come out behind. And so it's a real issue here in Colorado.
Absolutely. And some of my longtime listeners, too, know that I've had a personal vehicle that was stolen as well. And, I even read a eulogy for the car on the show, I will say. But the fact is, it was mind blowing to me because it was not a nice car. It was a project car. It was a $500 beater car. And, the only thing I can think of, it wasn't something in my eyes. It's like, well, thieves want to steal these cool cars and do this, which in reality, it's not that. I think when we were talking before the show, you mentioned that the thieves are not stealing the cars because they want to necessarily joyride in them. I'm sure some do, but you said it was for other reasons. What are some of those reasons?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. And so if you think of your whatever the nicest vehicle you own is, and I think you told me it was a Honda S2000.
Yep, yeah, that's one of my pride and joys.
Okay, so if you were of a criminal mindset, you would be foolish to drive that to a bank robbery or to make a drug run down to Mexico or something, because that's going to get confiscated or destroyed in the process. So a lot of the thieves use these vehicles to commit other crimes. And I'm aware of a case actually right there in Colorado Springs where a person had their car stolen. The police recovered it. And when they were done, they found 32 uncapped needles from syringes in the car, along with some like chips of meth and some different things. And so I almost don't want to have my car back if it has all that in there. I'd hate for a dog or a kid to get stuck with a needle or worse, ingest something like that. So one of the big reasons is to use these cars in other crimes. Wow.
And that is kind of speaking to, talking about some of the effect this has on people. Because as you were saying that, I'm just picturing maybe a single mother or somebody who has her car stolen. She gets it back, but it's not something she can use. It's not safe for her or her kids to be in it either. What, from your perspective, working in law enforcement and seeing this day in and day out, what is that effect like on people, on, the victims, you could say, of these crimes? Because that's what they are. They're 100% victims.
Well, you asked me in a previous question why the dramatic rise in auto theft in Colorado, and one of the issues that I think myself personally caused it is reducing the penalties for auto theft. And so at one time in Colorado, you could steal a car and you might get arrested that night, but you'd bond out on a PR bond and be stealing cars tomorrow. And the worst sentence you'd get is just additional months onto your unsupervised probation. And so the legislature took a hard look at that last year, and they brought back some of the tougher penalties, but they also set aside money to help some of the victims. And we talked before the show about a case where I recovered a stolen car in downtown Denver at a public parking facility, and the lady who lost it was a single mother with a job, and to keep the job, she had to drive that car, liability only, so it's not covered, and it had a car seat. So we took someone who was getting by in society and literally took away their job and took away their ability to transport their child with a stolen car. And then we were able to get it back to keep her on the path that she was on to be successful.
Wow. Just the toll this takes, I think, on people, who are involved with it is just, to me, it's heartbreaking in many ways. I think about when I had my car stolen, it was a project car. It wasn't even a second vehicle. It was worse than that, but it wasn't bad for me. And I just think of, the fact that most people aren't, car nuts. Most people don't have like 8 project cars that sometimes run, but you can at least cobble one together to get to work. Most people aren't like that. They've got this one car in the family. They need it to get the kids to school. They got to get to work. Maybe they're a tradesman and they got to take it to the job site, and it really is tragic to see the effects of that, and how we in Colorado are the hotbed for that. We're the biggest state in the nation for it. Now, I want to get into some of the things that can be done to prevent auto theft. We're going to talk about the Colorado Auto Theft Prevention Authority and more after the break right here. You're listening to Automotive ADHD. My guest is Sheriff Rich Smith, Custer County Sheriff. Sheriff Smith, hang with me through the break. We'll be back in just a second. And we're back on the Automotive ADHD show. You can hear it across the radio here in Southern Colorado, as well as on the podcast on the internet. My guest right now is Sheriff Rich Smith, Custer County Sheriff. We're talking about auto theft, how Colorado is the biggest in terms of auto theft in the nation. And we're going to talk a little bit, too, how to prevent that. Sheriff Smith, thanks again for joining me here on Automotive ADHD.
Thanks you for having me. I'm excited to be able to share this with your listeners and hopefully make it tougher for the thieves to steal their cars.
Absolutely. Now, that's what we need to do. We need to make it tougher for those thieves to steal the cars. Now, one of the things that's doing that, but also helping people who've had their cars stolen, is the Colorado Auto Theft Prevention Authority, and you're a board member there. Tell me a little bit about what you do.
I am. So back in 2002, the state legislature created an authority called the Colorado Auto Theft Prevention Authority. And I don't know if we were the first one in the nation, but we were among the first. And now there's actually 13 different states, a province in Canada, and also in Australia that have these auto theft prevention authorities. And the funding comes from a dollar fee that your car insurance company actually collects from you on your bill. So if you look at your recent bill from your car insurance, it'll say something cat paw fee, $1. That adds up to about $5.5 million a year. So I sit on the board, and I'm the sheriff, there's a chief of police, there's somebody from Department of Revenue, there's several representatives from the insurance industry, a representative from used car dealers, just kind of all the different stakeholders. And I live in Custer County, and we're 740 square miles, and we're a small agency, so we may only have one or two deputies at a time. And so if an auto theft happens in Custer County, and our numbers are roughly equivalent per capita to what they are in other parts of the state, the car is probably not going to stay in Custer. So it's going to go to Pueblo or El Paso or Fremont County. And so a lone deputy who's out on patrol just doesn't have the time to follow up with that. And that's where the Auto Theft Prevention Authority comes in. So there are several different organizations, the biggest of which is called Battle, which is Beat Auto Theft Through Law Enforcement. And multiple agencies will sign into that task force, and they'll assign a detective, and this is paid with the money from the Auto Theft Prevention Authority. And then they focus on auto theft in certain regions of the state, and we've got some of those listed. But the Denver Metro is one, and then El Paso County and Pueblo County is another large area that they serve. So using this money from the auto theft, the auto insurance companies and your listeners, they fund these detectives to go out and solve auto thefts. And they work with intelligence, and I actually helped start the intelligence piece of that, which was called Auto Theft Intelligence Coordination Center, ATIC. And I went to the Cat Paw board to get funding when I was at the State Patrol to fund that. And we would try to figure out who the worst of the worst auto theft suspects were. And they get into some very complex undercover operations where they're following these people around, or maybe by airplane, and trying to build organized crime cases on them where the penalties are much more severe than just one single case of auto theft or burglary of a vehicle.
Wow. Well, and that's really amazing, too, because when I've talked to people who've also dealt with auto theft, I think sometimes people get the feeling that they file the police report and then nothing happens, and some people may never see that car again. But there is really something going on, substantial, what you're doing behind the scenes to prosecute and find these guys who are stealing cars. Now, you mentioned something, and I want to tag on this a little bit. You mentioned something about organized crime. Now, before the show, when we were talking, you mentioned organized crime uses homeless people to steal cars. Tell me a little bit about that.
So the scenario that I'm speaking of is at the Denver International Airport. So the worst place you can park your car in Colorado if you don't want it stolen is the Denver International Airport. The second worst or most vulnerable place you can park your car is at an airport parking lot near the airport, and that's where these organized crime are just coming in, stealing cars every single day and night. And so what I've been told is that they actually they do some kind of a recon to figure out where the cars are that they want to steal. And you might have somebody that knows how to steal Hyundais and Kias, or somebody that knows how to steal Ford F-150 pickups or whatever. And then they go out and they pay homeless people in Denver, I believe the price is $200, to get in a van. They drive them out to the airport. They drop them off outside the prospective car they're supposed to drive home. And then when they deliver the car to the final destination, they get paid the balance of that money. And there's even a case of people doing a fraudulent VIN sticker. So literally, before you wake up, there's already fraudulent VIN stickers on the stolen car to make it tougher to identify, even the next morning before you wake up.
Wow. And this is just crazy to think about. What, out of curiosity, what is so profitable with the stolen cars, aside from using them to commit other crimes? Are they parting these out? Are they doing different VIN stickers and then selling them? Where do these cars end up after they've been stolen?
So you actually just said it. So some of the cars end up in chop shops, and there's a very lucrative market in providing fenders or doors or radios from these vehicles. One other thing that Cat Paw funds is a statewide Colorado Auto Theft Investigator, CAT-I, annual conference. And that rotates around the state, and we bring detectives in from all the police departments in Colorado, and we learn the trends. And in fact, one that I went to, there was a gentleman from General Motors whose specific job was to protect General Motor cars from auto theft. So he was there to learn what techniques we were seeing, and he was taking it back to GM, and he described a project he was working on to protect the Escalade from being stolen and make it tougher for thieves to steal the car.
Wow. Now, out of curiosity, tying this back into, we talked about Custer County. So Custer County is an interesting county because it's one of the most beautiful counties, in my opinion, in Colorado. But it's big. It's 700, you said 740 square miles, but with a lower amount of population there. How are you fighting for smaller communities with what you're doing in the Custer County, Sheriff's Department and things like that? How are you working for those smaller communities?
So I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak on the radio, but it's going to be played in Custer County to the citizens, and so I'm hoping to help them learn. We also do a thing called Coffee with a Cop, and we pass out information like this on how to protect themselves. One of and you mentioned in your previous question, what are they doing with the cars? Some of these cars end up getting sold on Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist on the internet. And man, that's a risky place to buy a car. And so one of the services that the Custer Sheriff's Office offers is a thing called a certified VIN inspection. And you might get sent to us from the Department of Motor Vehicles when you're trying to register the vehicle, but we can kind of help you go through and see if you're driving one of these cars that's been stolen and disguised or chop shopped or stuff like that. But so the message I want to send out there is, if it sounds too good to be true, it is too good to be true on buying a used car.
Well, that, and even some of those, I've come across this looking for new project cars. Sometimes you see something on Facebook Marketplace, too good to be true, definitely is too good to be true. And sometimes not only maybe is it a stolen car, but it could be a scam to get you out there and rob you too. I've heard of that happening to some folks as well.
You're 100% correct. So one of the keywords I would look for on Facebook Marketplace ads or Craigslist or wherever you're looking for used cars is it says no title, parts only. Well, that is probably a stolen car. They don't have the title, and they've already taken the big stuff off, and now they're just trying to make a few bucks on the parts that they have remaining. Wow. Now, as we're wrapping up the segment here, what are things listeners can do to prevent this? What things have you seen that have been successful in at least deterring criminals or just making it harder? Because if something's harder to steal, the criminals might move on to the next thing. What do you think works? So I track my personal vehicles. I track them. I have a tile tracker in both vehicles. The vehicle that I'm concerned about getting stolen, which I mentioned to you, is a Genesis. It's a fast car. I even have a steering wheel lock on it. So I'm doing things to harden my car. And another thing that I warn people against is I'm very pro Second Amendment, and we had talked, and you are as well, but I would never stick a sticker on my car that says Glock or SIG or Trigicon or whatever it is you're promoting, because that's what the thieves are looking for. They know, hey, there's a potential of getting a firearms out of a car, and then that opens up a whole new avenue for them to commit crime. So I believe in hardening the target, using a tile tracker or Apple tracker, putting a steering wheel club on, and the detectives in the street tell me this is actually deterring people from stealing cars. And then up here in Custer County, the sheriff's office also offers a VIN we etch it on your catalytic converter. So we stick a sticker on for free for our citizens, and there's a sticker on the windshield that says their catalytic converter has been protected and it can be tracked by law enforcement.
Wow. Well, and it's amazing that you're doing that, and seeing that type of work done, I think helps people be at least, know that law enforcement is taking this really seriously, that you guys are here to help the people when it comes to preventing auto theft and many other things. And it's really amazing what you're doing with that. And are there any other thoughts you could think of on just if someone is sitting here listening to the show thinking, well, I have to park my car here every day, or I got to take it to this bad part of town in whatever city. Are there any other thoughts you can think of?
Yeah, so one, harden your car. And then you mentioned that you didn't take your car to Denver Airport because you heard that was a place where it was likely to be stolen.
Yep.
And then you said, the police, a listener might feel that the police aren't doing something to track their car, but at least they're collecting the data, and we're using that to analyze for like what day of the week or time of day or part of the state to do these undercover operations. And I use it up here in Custer County. I'm a very small police department, but I use the data even to schedule the deputies so that I have the deputies working on the time where the crimes are being committed, and they're focused on the areas where the crimes are happening.
Wow. And that's kind of using technology to your advantage now, too. I mean,
Absolutely.
even the thieves are getting smarter with technology. Tell me a little bit about that, too.
So I heard of one thief where they would steal the car, and then there's several websites where you can run a VIN number to see if it's stolen. And then so every time they left their house to go do crimes or come back, they'd check the VIN number on the computer to see if it had finally been reported to law enforcement to see if it was stolen. So if you do think your car is stolen, make sure you get it reported to us right away, else we can get that entered in the computer and start looking for it. One of the other big technologies that I like seeing out there is a thing called a license plate camera. And so you can mount those on police vehicles or on fixed locations. And then if a car drives by, the camera has the intelligence to decode the license plate and then compare it to a list and then alert law enforcement that a stolen Honda S2000 just drove by.
Oh, hopefully not a stolen S2000.
Right.
Oh, man. Yeah. Well, and it's really encouraging knowing the work that you're doing, knowing the work that some of the other police departments out there are doing, too. And with what the Colorado Auto Theft Prevention Authority is able to do in actually solving some of these crimes. Again, I think people have this notion that, well, it gets stolen and nothing happens. But again, that's not true. And I think you've really shed some light onto how the police are looking at auto theft, and especially what you have to do in our state here. Again, you get people coming to Colorado because it's a beautiful state, and it is, but it's just amazing to think that kind of in the underground, this auto theft is going on. So I really have to thank you and all of the deputies that work underneath you for what you guys do.
Absolutely. And I think law enforcement is doing a good thing out there to deter and investigate auto theft crimes. But last year, the legislature did help us out a little bit on the penalties. And then Governor Polis actually said that he wanted to take Colorado from the high crime numbers that we are, and he wanted it to be one of the 10 safest states to live in. And I certainly support that as well.
Absolutely. My guest again is Sheriff Rich Smith, Custer County Sheriff. Sheriff Smith, I want to thank you for joining me right here on Automotive ADHD.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. And, I'm really grateful for all of the work that Sheriff Smith and his deputies do here in Colorado, in Custer County, what the folks at the Colorado Auto Theft Prevention Authority do as well. They are doing some very important work. We can't keep being number one in the country for car theft. That can't be allowed to happen for any longer. We need to do something about that. And it sounds like there's some stuff happening as well. So there you go. Now, by the way, I do want to thank you for joining me on this edition of the show and remind you to stay tuned because I'm going to be at the SEMA Car Show later this month and going into November. It is going to be great fun. You don't want to miss a minute of it. Of course, I want to thank the members of the Speed Council who keep this show funded as well. You can find that at thespeedcouncil.org. Remember, you can catch this show on the radio here on AM 1460 and FM 101.1 The Answer, as well as a podcast wherever fine shows, and hey, this one are downloaded, and on YouTube and Rumble. I'll see you next week.